Good morning. Welcome to Bay Area Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Katie McQuage-Loukas, and my pronouns are she and hers. What a week. And here we are on Sunday morning. We have gathered as we always gather, and we've gathered for 1,001 reasons because I'm sure that each of us are carrying 4 or 5 reasons that we need to be here in our hearts as we attempt to respond to the world in which we have found ourselves. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you have come to this place on this morning in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit, whether you're joining us here in person or watching online, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. If this is your first time, if this is your 500th time, however many times you have come, we are glad to see you today. We are glad to see each other, and we are glad to be here. Whatever else may be true this day, we are here together. We know that much is true, that we have responded to a gentle tug in our hearts or our spirits, and we have gathered. And so for this place and for these people with whom we have gathered, we lift up our hearts in gratitude. Let us take this moment to pause, to settle in, to shake off all the things we carry with us, to breathe if we need to take a deep breath. Maybe we've been breathing a little shallowly lately. Oh, we are here. We are now, and we are together. I have some opening words for us this morning from the Reverend Dr. Natalie Finnemore, and she is the lead minister at our Shelter Rock congregation. She's also been a religious educator and a leader in many, many roles in our systems. We are all called by the wind, the rushing water, the fireflies, the summer sun. Called by the sidewalk, the playground, the laughing children, the street lights. Called by our appetites and gifts, our needs and challenges. Called by the bottle, the needle, the pill, the game, the need, the want, the cure, the love, the hope, the dream. Called by the spirit of love and hope and visions of God's purpose for our lives. We are all called. What do we choose, and how do we answer? Come and let us worship together.
Brad James will light our chalice this morning. Joy and grief, health and sickness, light and darkness, peace and anger, life and death, wholeness and brokenness. We each bring all of these here to this sanctuary of unity in diversity for this 1 hour of this one day, and pour them out, commingling the oil of our lives to become the flame of this chalice, the symbol of our shared living faith. Our opening song this morning is Here We Have Gathered, number 360 in your gray hymnal, or the words will also be up here. Please join us.
All
You're welcome in this space, this sanctuary of peace, where we come not only to create our best selves, but also to do the work of creating a beloved community. We come together today as individuals, much like individual pieces of glass or pottery that are in different shapes, sizes, and colors, all of which are broken with imperfect, jagged edges, but always beautiful. While our pieces may not always fit neatly together, it is within this sanctuary, guided by our principles, that we gather together to create a beautiful mosaic. May the brokenness and beauty you find in one another create peace in this space and fill our hearts with love as we create worship together. So with these words in mind, please join me in saying our covenant, which begins with the words, "Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, thus do we covenant with one another."
I have a unison reading for us this morning. It's number 580. It is The Task of the Religious Community by Mark Morrison Reed. And if you ever want to read about the history of Black Unitarian Universalism, Mark Morrison Reed is your guy, just FYI. So it's number 580, and it is a unison reading, so please join in with me. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed.
Hi, my name is Joss Bisbano. For my pronouns, she or they is A-OK. And I'm substituting for Gloria today. Our story is Martha and Wait Still Sharp. This is the story of how a boy found out that his Unitarian Universalist grandmother and grandfather were heroes. As an 8th grader in New York City, a boy named Artemis Jakowski III chose his grandmother to interview for a school assignment. His grandmother was named Martha Sharp. Telling his grandparents' story is a way to pass along the question that Martha Sharp posed to Artemis throughout his life: what are you going to do that is important in your life? On a snowy night in Prague in 1939, Martha Sharp jumped from a taxi, darted around a corner, and flattened herself into a doorway. The heels of a pursuing Gestapo agent clicked past her. She entered an unlit apartment building, dashed up 5 flights of stairs, and rang the bell of a known anti-Nazi leader. 6 weeks earlier, Martha and her husband, the Reverend Wait Still Sharp, had left their young children safely behind in the United States so they could volunteer for a relief effort in Czechoslovakia, sponsored by the American Unitarian Association. Then one night in 1939, the Nazi army marched into Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia, and occupied the city. The helping mission of the Sharps instantly changed into a treacherous cloak and dagger mission. That March night, a woman opened the apartment door to Martha, denying she had even heard of the man Martha was looking for. I begged, Martha recounted the story later to a biographer. I told her there was little time. I produced my American passport. When she saw it, she said in Czech, "A moment," and then snatched my passport from me and shut the door in my face. For the next few minutes, Martha frantically worried whether she'd see her passport again. Her passport was her only ticket to safety. But the door did open, and this time a man stood before her. Martha asked if he was Mr. X, as Martha later referred to him when she told the story. He said he could give Mr. X a message. She explained she'd been charged by a group of British and American refugee workers with transporting him to the British embassy so he could be smuggled from the country. The man asked her to wait a moment, then disappeared into the apartment. He opened the door again wearing an overcoat. He handed Martha her passport and said, "I am Mr. X." Together they walked through wind and snow across the city. A Nazi soldier stopped them when they reached a bridge over the Vltava River. Martha produced her passport and confidently announced, "Americans." They were waved across the bridge, then stopped by another soldier on the other side. The passport trick worked again. Just steps outside the British embassy, a third Gestapo officer stopped them. Martha began to loudly complain about the lack of taxis and her frustration at being late for a meeting with the embassy secretary. She flashed her passport and demanded the guard tell the secretary, "Mr. and Mrs. Sharp are here." He waved them ahead to speak with a British guard, and Martha and Mr. X walked into the embassy to safety. Martha then returned to her apartment where Wait Still was returning from a similar mission. They watched out their window as Nazi soldiers looted Prague stores and warehouses. The rescue of Mr. X is one of hundreds that the couple orchestrated, helping Jews and non-Jews, intellectuals, political leaders, writers, artists, and children flee to safety from the Nazis. Yet the heroism of Martha and Wait Still Sharp is just beginning to be recognized. The story of the Sharps' courage illuminates some of the dilemmas that perplex people who care about social justice. How many of us want to help but are afraid or don't know how? Taking a courageous stand does not require sacrifices and heroics on the scale of the Sharps. It's easy to feel small in comparison to Wait Still and Martha Sharp, says the Reverend Dr. William F. Schultz. Not every one of us can set out for war-torn Europe, but every one of us can help those who do. In sharing his grandparents' experience, Artemis Jakowski wanted their story to inspire others, not overwhelm them. Life is made of righteous moments, not grandiose moments. Making choices where you reflect on how you treat everyone in your life. The key part about my grandparents wasn't just one big moment. They made thousands of little choices that led up to the story that we now tell. Artemis remembers his grandmother, Martha Sharp, and asking him, "What are you going to do that is important in your life?" Even now that he's grown up, married, and a father of 3 children, he still hears her words. As a child, Artemis Joukowsky always answered the same way, "I'm going to overcome my disease," referring to his lifelong battle with spinal muscular atrophy, a progressive illness. Today, he has become an advocate for disability rights and is the author of Raising the Bar, New Horizons in Disability Sports. Telling his grandparents' story is a way to pass along to you, a new generation, the question that Martha Sharp asked him, "What are you going to do that is important in your life?"
Thank you, Joss. Stella is our keeper of the flame this morning. Please join me in saying, "We pass this flame of religious freedom from generation to generation."
We begin this time of joys and sorrows, hopes and worries by lighting our red candle of community as a reminder that we are a people of memory and hope, that we hold all that brought us here and we look ahead to the future. We also light this candle for all of the prayers and dreams for the people not in this room. For people who are traveling or away or watching online, we hold your prayers in our hearts as well. We light too our white candle for peace in a world that does not have very much of it. We light it for nations at war. We light it for people under threat, but we also light it for individuals who faced violence in their homes and in their nations. We light that candle out of hope for a world that might be different, and to contain our promise that we will do our part in creating that world. I would now like to invite all of you to light candles of your own for what is on your hearts this morning, for the joys and the milestones and the celebrations, and for the worries and the fears, all of the things we bring from our weekday lives into this place. Please come forward and light your candles so that we might help you hold these things for a time. Whatever you have brought, you are not alone in it, and we will bear witness with you. all of these flames and ember in our hearts, will you please join with me in prayer? Infinite mystery, source and wellspring of love and justice, well up in us this day. Some among us this morning are overwhelmed, some grieving, some shattered, some simply confused. We gather this day in the knowledge that the tides and winds have changed. We are not who we were mere months ago, days ago. We are different people, and we are on an unknown, new, and different path. In a time of uncertainty, remind us that there are some certainties in this world. Remind us that there are things we know to be true. Remind us of the most important thing we know to be true, that we are bound together by love, that we are guided by love, and that we are held in love. Spirit of love and justice, guide us in our seeking, guide us in our work. Give us the strength to ask for what we need, the wisdom to see what must be done, the tenderness to open our hearts to the world around us, and the certainty of spirit to answer the world again and again with yes. Yes, I am here. Yes. Help us to hold one another in safety and love so that we might see each other through rough times, and so that we might find our way onto more certain ground together, always together. Amen, and may it be so. Our meditation song today, the lyrics will be on the screen. It is one I do not know if you have sung before, so we're going to try it 3 times through. Please remain seated.
Our reading this morning is Love Beyond God by Reverend Adam Dyer. What if every time you woke, your sigh was felt by every being on earth? What if every time you spoke, your words were heard by every ear on earth? What if, when you told a joke, you tickled the senses of every smile on earth? What if, with each tender stroke, you shared your touch with every hand on earth? What if, when your heart broke, you tasted the tears running down every cheek on earth? No bond or brand or gilded yoke. Surely, this is a love that reaches beyond, that holds one to another and every other to one. No matter the color or where we're from, this is now. This is we. This is love. This is God. And this is love beyond God.
Reverend Dyer was the parish minister in Cambridge, Massachusetts for several years, although I think now he's getting his PhD at the University of Virginia and doing research on the impact of the slave trade in Unitarian churches in New England. So deep, deep, important work. I'm going to go ahead and just say now that this isn't quite the sermon I planned to write, because I think events will continue to outpace me for some time. We ministers, we write a worship description that sounds good, and we know that by the time we actually write it, it might not quite be that, but it's usually close enough that I don't think anybody notices. And that's going to be harder in the months ahead. I'm still having similar thoughts, but I think I'm taking a little bit of a different path to get there. The thought that I originally came to this day with was, what would our world look like if we all, in every moment, fully recognized our interdependence, to experience what Reverend Dyer is calling this love beyond God? We talk about it, this love that binds us and holds us and is the core of our faith tradition. But the context has shifted. I don't think my answer to that question has changed. I just think I'm getting to it in a different way. Immediately following the election in November, the president of our Unitarian Universalist Association, she is Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, and she reminded us that we are a sanctuary people. And she wrote to all of us, "I want to invite us all back into what we learned in our earliest understandings of what humanity itself means. We draw our purpose from the call to honor and uphold the non-negotiable sacredness of each and every person, of earth and of all beings, bound up together in an abiding love that rests in the call to justice." Amid the uncertainty of that moment, she called us back to that guiding foundational principle. The confusion and uncertainty many of us have experienced since November has not, I think, gotten better. I don't think it's clarified. If anything, I feel that my own confusion has magnified under the barrage of governmental actions that either make no sense, that are blatantly unlawful, or just simple grifting with no tangible purpose. And I feel like in this moment, there's very little that is clear and legible. But I do think one thing that has become very clear is that our government will not be of much use to many of us for some time. I think we have seen in the news this week that we are all literally less physically safe on a basic level. There are people who are under direct threat, targeted, marginalized people, but even on just a baseline level that involves the CDC and the safety of our food, we are less safe. FEMA, who knows what's going to happen at FEMA? Is the Treasury Department going to send out checks next week? No one knows. It's hard to say. Last time around, the last time we did this, Adam Sorer in The Atlantic said that the cruelty was the point, and I think that still holds true. But this time I think also the chaos is the point, that dismantling our sense of safety and normalcy is the point, that dismantling our sense of reality as we cope with just language being banned. This is the point, to keep us in a state of uncertainty and bewilderment and to keep us off balance. It's a tactic. Knowing that it's a tactic doesn't make it that much less effective, but it does help me feel like, well, at least I'm not just a lost little lamb who doesn't know what to do. This is actually how this is working. And it has always been true that social and political safety is patchy, that it has not always been as reliable as we wish it to be. It has always been true to some extent that we keep ourselves safe, that we keep ourselves resilient, that we take care of each other, that we build safety for each other, and that we rely on each other. That is what community means. And I feel like now that truth is very stark. What would the world look like if we all recognized our interdependence and were guided by a love beyond belief and doctrine? As a project, as a vision, that seems a little bit beyond my reach at this moment. But what would this room look like? That's a project in my reach. That is something I can envision. And I think that from there, that is the seed that we can grow into something broader, into that larger vision we cannot yet quite understand. And I think that if we can do it here, where else could we do it? How do we radiate outward? And if enough of us do it, can we trust that it will be enough and that we will eventually meet edge to edge with everyone else who is doing this work? I don't know. I don't know if that is the way that ends, but at this precise moment, that is what I have. Electoral politics takes years, lawsuits take years, and these are incremental reform movements around the edges. I'm not sure we have that kind of time. But a church does not have to wait around and try to gather others to accomplish some of its goals. Some of it does, but not all of them. There are things that we can do right now, that we can just do, you and I together. And I think right now that's where we are. We're the ones who have to take care of us and of our neighbors and our communities and our loved ones, and we can do that. And part of that work is envisioning this place as more than just a sanctuary, as the word for the building that we meet in, but as a house of refuge for all who will need it, so we can receive as many other people as best we can. Before there ever was a Unitarian Universalist association, before there were Unitarians and Universalists, and even before Christianity, there was a tradition of sanctuary in religious sanctuaries. Ancient temples were places where one could be cleansed of wrongdoing and freed from the consequences from the state, freed from vengeance or blood feud. This was even true when temples were part of the state. It was part of the job of a temple. Religious authorities were shelters. These places were considered inviolable. Violence could not enter them. In most cases, sanctuary was not forever. You couldn't just live in the temple for the rest of your life. But you might have enough time to arrange for an exile instead of just running away with nothing. You might have time to clear your name. You might have time to negotiate. You might have time to breathe and figure out solutions. In those times, religion did what it could to be a counterbalance to political power, especially when that power went beyond what was considered acceptable by the religious authorities. There was push-pull there. Especially in medieval times, the churches supported work of reconciliation, atonement, what we might think of today as transformative justice, possibilities beyond pure punishment. Churches and bishops and ministers and priests could be advocates, could put a stop to vengeance, could block political prisoners. The church sanctuary system peaked in the Middle Ages with the peak of church power. And the relationship between church and state in Europe changed a great deal after the Reformation, and the rise of nation states did a lot to limit church power in this regard. I wish I knew more about non-Christian traditions of sanctuary, because I know that they are there, but this is our heritage in this room, and it is what I know. There are two moments in the history of the United States in which I think the sanctuary concept is particularly relevant. The first is the Underground Railroad and the abolitionist movement. The Quakers get a great deal of the credit for keeping the concept of sanctuary at the heart of their efforts. They connected with free black churches and other white abolitionist groups, including our own Unitarian and Universalist forebears and our Congregationalist cousins. And they created bolt holes and safe paths, and they used church networks to do it. After the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act, it's important to be clear that the abolitionists were specifically acting in defiance of law and siding with conscience. This became a moment in which these communities had to actively choose to violate the law. For the nonviolent activists, particularly among the Unitarians and the Quakers, this was a real crisis, because working within the system was kind of part of the deal. And they had to ask themselves, what are we willing to risk at this point? And aside from what we are willing to risk, what risks are fair for we to place on others? Did taking on a risk from a position of privilege help or harm the cause? And each person in their particular context had to answer that question. There's another sanctuary movement that is probably living memory for many in this room, and in fact, it still happens all over the country today, though not at the level it did in the 80s. In the 80s, Central American immigrants were overwhelming the legal refugee system, and the government was attempting to crack down and narrow the number of people who could seek entry. So people sought entry in other ways, as humans have always done. Churches, once again, including the Quakers and UUs, but also a whole swath of other denominations and faiths, declared themselves to be sanctuaries for immigrants in danger of deportation. Hundreds of churches did this work. And not all of these groups agreed about tactics and about what the movement was trying to do necessarily, but they all agreed that as religious institutions, their buildings could be safe houses. They all agreed that their religious heritage moved them to shelter the stranger in defiance of law. In both the 19th century and in the 1980s, folks were arrested for creating sanctuary. They went to trial, and legal protections ended up being established, some formal, some informal. This work has continued, particularly under the first Trump administration, and in years past, the legal norm has been that there are some places immigration authorities, ICE, DHS will not go. In order to ensure that people can receive health care, they won't go into hospitals. In order to ensure that people educate their children, they won't go into schools. In order to ensure that people are able to exercise their right to free worship, they won't go into churches. That policy has been rescinded. Within the last week, agents waited on the steps of a church to detain someone walking out of the building. This has happened before. Just because there are policies in place doesn't mean they are always executed perfectly, but now we no longer even have that policy. Sanctuary cities are currently being threatened with loss of funds, that transportation funds, for example, will be withheld if our city administrations don't cooperate with ICE. Schools are seeing issues and having unsettling encounters with law enforcement, although reporting on that's not really clear at this moment. And so right now, in January 2025, I think many of us are once again asking ourselves, what are we willing to risk? How do we create safety when the law does not provide it for us? To be a sanctuary in this time is to take on risk. Not just being a literal building sheltering people, but any other actions we might do. I think we all know that right now in Texas, helping someone obtain reproductive care opens us to significant legal action. Assisting with gender-appropriate care opens us to legal action. Providing young people with certain books is probably going to open us to legal action at some point. All of these things have become risky endeavors in a way that they were not in years past. And I'm going to be upfront here and say that I don't actually have a single perfect answer. This is what it means to be a people of sanctuary, and this is what we're going to do. If I pretended to know the answer to that question, I would just be up here lying to you. And it's not because I don't think we're willing. I think we are willing. But I think we need to assess what we're capable of taking on, and more importantly, assess how much risk others will experience if we try to help them. And we need to be careful, and we need to be cautious, and I need to be careful about what I say when it streams outward on the internet, so I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't think any of this is going to stop us from doing what we feel is right, but I think it does change how we do it, how we talk about it, and who among us takes on which roles in the days ahead. And in spite of all of my uncertainty about logistics and who and how and why, I again return to things about which I am certain. I know that we are bound together and that what affects any of us affects all of us. I know that in this moment we are right in the middle of that poem by the German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller, "The first they came for, we're here." We're in the middle. First, they've already come for a few people. We are here. And I know that we as a people and as a community are committed to living out love, the love at the heart of our values. And I still feel like I have some answers. I will say in this moment that I will stand between law enforcement and really just about anybody. I just don't know if that's enough right now. I don't know if that will have a tangible effect in that moment. We'll have to try it and find out. And whether or not I have specific answers, I do trust us as a community, and I trust the people in this room, and I have faith in us that we will figure it out together, because that's what we do. Us and the Quakers, this is what we do. And I believe that when the actual moments arise right in front of us, we will rise to meet them. Right now, we're feeling our way forward in the dark, and that has to be okay because that is what there is. And this is probably not the most optimistic and hopeful sermon I have ever preached, at least not in the short term. I think, have some long-term hope and optimism. And I can't say that everything's going to be okay, because we don't know that it will be. But I can say that we will take care of each other, because that's what we do, and because of course we will. And I will ask in this moment, what risk are you willing to take? Because right now, that's the question that matters the most. And so think about that question now, so that we as a collective entity can think about what risk the big we are willing to take on, now and in the future. Think about that question now, so that we can discern what it means to be a people of sanctuary here and now and in these times, not in historical times, but now. And think now about what it means to be a people of sanctuary, so that when the moment comes, because I think that it will come, we know the answer and we are ready. Amen. It feels a little bit rough to make this transition, but I have to do it anyway because we fund ourselves. We take care of ourselves and we fund ourselves. There's no outside funding keeping us going week to week. So this is the time when we practice both gratitude and generosity. Gratitude for this place and whatever resources we have in our lives, and the generosity to share them with each other and with this institution so we can continue to do the work that we need to do in the world.
Please join me in saying, "This gift from the abundance of my life blesses me, our ministries, and the world." All right, time for some announcements here. This Tuesday, February 4th at 7 p.m., please join us in the sanctuary for a special presentation by guest speaker, Dr. Richard Stoll. Dr. Stoll will address the topic of American foreign policy at crossroads. A distinguished expert in international conflict, American national security policy, and computer simulation in political science, Professor Stoll has held leadership roles at Rice University, including Associate Dean of Social Sciences and Associate Director of the James A. Baker III Institute for Public Policy. This Wednesday, February 5th, join us for dinner in Cockrell Hall. Whether you're looking for kid-friendly favorites, hearty omnivore dishes, or delicious vegetarian and vegan options, we've got something for everyone. Bring your family, invite your friends, and enjoy a warm and welcoming meal together. All are welcome. After dinner, take a few minutes to uplift your spirit and join Reverend Katie in the sanctuary for a Vespers service. And are you curious about pagan beliefs and practices? Do you identify as a pagan or want to learn more about goddess spirituality, witchcraft, or neo-paganism? Join us on Thursday, February 6th at 6 p.m. in the sanctuary for the first meeting of the rebirth of our Bay Area Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans. Celebrate the cycles of the seasons with us. Everyone who attends will have a chance to win a free witchy gift basket. 6 p.m. Okay, after the service next Sunday, families, parents, and children bring your appetite and a dish to share for a delightful potluck lunch. While the children play and are cared for, parents can engage in meaningful discussions about parenting topics. Don't miss out on this perfect blend of food, fun, and parenting insights. Excuse me. Also next Sunday after coffee and fellowship, join us in the youth room as we set the groundwork for this year's summer day camp for our elementary age youth. Become part of the planning along with Gloria, Cindy Forbes, and Christy Gates on Sunday. Whether you have suggestions for themes, fun activities, or dates and times, we encourage folks interested in being part of this summertime week-long event to attend. And everyone is invited to attend this year's stewardship dinner, which kicks off our annual pledge drive and is crucial for our financial planning for the next fiscal year. The dinner will be held in the church sanctuary on February 22nd at 6 p.m. We will be serving Mediterranean food with lemon chicken or tofu, rice, a mixed vegetable bean dish, green beans, salad, bread, and dessert. The event is BYOB. Please enjoy a great meal, conversation, and make a pledge for the upcoming year. We ask everyone to RSVP by February 19th. You can use the QR code up here to RSVP. Please join us immediately after the service today to mingle over coffee and enjoy light snacks in Cockrell Hall, which is down this way for those who are unfamiliar with Miller. Go till you can't, and then down at the end of the hall there. Let's come together and share some quality time as community. And finally, stay connected with everything happening at BAUUC by subscribing to our weekly newsletter. Delivered every Tuesday, it's packed with news, events, and updates about our community. Look, there's a QR code on the screen, or you can visit BAUUC.org to sign up today. The closing song today is hymn number 108 in your gray hymnal, My Life Flows On.
Don't hold me to this, but I think that's also a Quaker hymn. That was the theme of the week for me, I think. I don't know. My closing words for us today are from Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in love, go in peace, and go in justice so that we can figure out what's next. Amen.